Bulelani, welcome to SuperLead Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Lovely, lovely. So thank you for making the time. And I believe we're gonna have another conversation soon as your next book comes through. But for today, we want to start the conversation, and where we like to start at this podcast is to kind of have a conversation about you first. Your story of Bulelani from as early as possible. And you just sort of track us to where you are today. You are a multi-award winning individual. You've done a lot of amazing things, but we want to kind of go to the backstory and say, where did this individual grow up? What happened? What sort of shaped some of your decision? And just track us all the way to where we are. And we've got time. You don't have to summarize it in two sentences.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the opportunity and the platform. The name is Bulelani Balabala. Sure, I guess before the entrepreneur and all the things that I do, I'd love to say I am someone who loves nature. I guess my first brush with nature growing up in the township was always being out in the bushes as Gangeni. That was my first affordable brush with nature, and we used to love, we got up to a lot of interesting things as a young boy. Would scour the township, finding new adventures and things to sort of navigate. And I think, I mean, out of that, I look now at what we're doing then, but sprouted out the creative ability to imagine things, and as a result, utilizing what other people would see as nothing, where there were bricks to us, there were cars, where there were tins to us, there were playing tools. And I think being able to embrace that allowed me to now utilize that as a strength, But I grew up raised by a single amazing, strong woman. I'm the youngest of two, so I've got an older brother. And we grew up in the Tembisa area. I mean, almost a typical town, almost a typical African story or South African story. Raised in a four-roomed house in the township in a part of Tembisa called the Mkansa section. That's my granddad's house. Yeah, and then I think schooling, went to multiple spaces, from other township to multiracial. But at the vantage point at which I'd gotten into my high schooling career, I went to a high school called Elite College, which was based in the Isando area. And then from there was taken the next year, which was my grade 9, to a boarding school called Val Christian High. I did my first year there, concluded, which was my grade 9. And then out of that, went to an FET college in Kempton Park, which was a Kuruleni West college. Then yeah, I think out of that journey, that's I
And,
guess
and, and what did you do at the college?
so the big thing I wanted to do there was I wanted to do IT, but that specific college didn't have IT.
Yeah,
So ended up doing, wanted to specialize in electronics, but the money ran dry. Was I think also the primary reason why I also went out of high school much earlier on, where I would have loved to have had a matric dance, was purely because the thinking was, should we run out of money, at least have a specialization of some kind.
I see.
That's the minimum entrance to an FET college is grade
Yeah.
9. Thus then the journey then began, and also then
Also,
ran
you didn't get to do a metric dance. Oh,
only with my cousin. I went there, I think my cousin was a year younger than me.
yeah.
So it was her turn to go to the matric dance. She gave me an opportunity to be her partner. So that's the closest I've ever gotten to being part of one. Um, and then, yeah, I think after that, I mean, spent about 2 years. I think that concluded in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, or 2004, when I had to drop out eventually out of college. Then spent I don't know, about 2 years doing, I don't know what, just loitering around, loafing around with almost aimlessly and no purpose. And I think, out of that, I remember, my mother would consistently say, come up with opportunities to go work there. But I guess because of one's entitlement as a young person, you want this fancy job, but you have never worked anywhere. You don't have any credentials, and you
Sure.
grow an ego out of it. So all the opportunities that you'd almost send our way, we would either lie about applying, don't apply at all, or just don't even go and attend to them because we just thought that we were better. And when I say we, at the time, my older cousin was living with us. So when we were
Right.
unemployed, and we then grew a complex that said we're better. I don't know where that came from. But I remember on one particular, then I got very involved in church, uh,
Yes.
very active in church. And I remember there was one particular Friday, a gentleman by the name of Hector Mtau, who was a presenter, radio presenter for Radio Bob at the time, came to our church to come in and share his story and inspire. And I think he
Yes.
said a couple of things that really stretched my mind, around dreaming beyond where you are. There's more to life than Tembisa. There's actually more to the South Africa than just Tembisa. Then sharing basic practical tools around wash your neighbor's car, get that 50 Rand at the time, 30 Rand or 20 Rand, get onto a taxi, go to your nearest town and just find a restaurant and sit. When you get there, they'll give you the newspaper for free and then tea will probably be 3 Rand. Just sit and watch people live. And I did that. We got into the taxi, went to Pretoria, found a wimpy there. I'd sit and just watch people live, walking up and down, watching people interact. And out of that, I think, and then I'd go to, I guess at the time was my favorite dealer, brand, which was Mercedes. And they used to have this big Mercedes as you drive into Pretoria, it'd be one of the first things you see.
Yes.
Business and branding on the left. And I'd get off there, and there was this gentleman, I forgot his name, who used to be an amazing salesman. You
Yeah.
could perfectly see that I didn't have the money, but he'd always entertain me every time I'm there, give me the latest spec vehicles. And as a result of that, I remember, I think at the time, my favorite car was a CLS 55 AMG, multi-spoke, chrome rims, beige interior, ostrich leather, handstake, analog watch. Keyless go. I memorized it, and it's such a funny thing that years later, when I could actually afford it, I'm not driving it and there's no
Oh
interest.
no, man.
But I guess if I find the first models, the vintage ones, I
Yes.
can get one just to live out that, just to live out that dream. But I think, in as far as inspiration is concerned, it
Yeah.
acted as deep inspiration to be able to help me dream bigger and better. Then out of that journey,
So,
yeah.
I just want to reflect a little bit on on just the impact of this one guy coming to give a motivational talk at a church, and then that sort of sets your life in a whole new direction, hey? And I just wonder for people who are listening to us whether we still those that are able to, value those moments and create the spaces and times to just go give a talk, and you just never know what might happen out of it.
No, true. I think I'm sure for him, he just was just going there to go give a talk. I mean, years later, when I
Yeah.
tracked him down, he couldn't even remember me. He was just saying, "Well, I'm glad. I don't even remember what I said." And I think that
Of
then
course.
it goes back to the impact of words,
Mm.
more than anything. But I think for me, then, out of that, then the seed was planted. Then I started to search for books. My friend's dad was our pastor, so he would lend me books from his dad's library. And I would
Oh,
read different types of books. Some of them were charismatic, but I read a book entitled How Faith Works by Dr.
right.
Frederick Price. And it really, I mean, although a charismatic book, but really had some very basic principles of how to navigate yourself, self-growth opportunities. And out of that, I started to dream very big. And I remember, I think the year was 2006. I then planted an idea in the minds of my friends to say, well, you guys will be going to senior positions next year. I would like to maybe make your matric jackets. And I think the idea of making the matric jackets came as a result of, I think, one of the guys I know in the same neighborhood as me, a good friend of mine, came back one day from school wearing a t-shirt with his name on it. And that was such a fascinating thing in the year 2006 or 5. You're wearing a t-shirt with your name on it. I mean, it was sort of unfounded to even see and witness that. But
Yeah.
other than then I then thought, well, I could make some money if I rebranded some of the soccer fans t-shirts, whether Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, or Swallows, or whatever at the time. And because the township has got a lot of staunch supporters.
Yes.
Out of that journey, he introduced me to his classmate who did that, who then introduced me to the Chinese guys he was working with in Bramley. Then the idea then got sparked and I became a broker. But out of that, then I planted the seed with the friends I had. We're going to matric in 2007 to say, listen, I could make you a matric jacket. They planted that seed in the minds of the deputy principal. And I remember
Yeah.
being invited at some point by the deputy principal, Mrs. Russ, deputy
Yes.
principal of Rhodes High School, which
Yeah.
is out in there with Rhodes Technical High School, which is almost 5 kilometers from Kempton Park, which would be the city center, about 5 or 10 Ks from the city center. And I remember being invited to come, pitch this business. And because the previous year, 2006, I was accompanying my cousin to matric dance, I had a pink shirt, black suit,
Right.
pick and awards are those very sharp nose shoes that point all the way up. I had my brother's relay bag. I fitted it with some bricks because I didn't have a laptop so that they weigh and they hold structure and form. I got one of his cell phone pouches, put it on, I hook it on the side on the belt. There I was, got off a train at Kempton Park, walked all the way to Rosefield High, rang the buzzer at the school. The big gate opened up, but I wasn't driving, walked in. Then this old receptionist lady walks out and says, "No, it's okay. You don't have to park your car outside. You can park it inside." I respond to her and say, "No, my driver went to the shops to go buy stuff. It's not a problem." That time, no driver, no license, nothing. I walk in, I get offered water. Mrs. Rice finally sees me. Well, Mrs. Rice is a very disciplined, focused, strong lady. And I guess you need to be because you're dealing with so many young people as the deputy principal. So she asked me questions around the business. I tell her we've got a factory in Joburg, we've got a factory in Cape Town. At that time, I'd never ever seen Cape Town and I'd rarely gone to Joburg. I tell her the business knows what it's doing. We manufacture these things. Then that's the first meeting. Then she says, "You know what, I'm a bit doubtful of you, but we'll
Sure.
talk. Thanks for
Sure.
coming." I leave. I get buzzed out. I go back home. 2 weeks later, I get called back in. Now,
Right.
when I get called back in, she says, "You must bring samples." Now, I frantically call the guy I know to say, "Listen, do you have samples of this?" He says, "Samples." He calls his main supplier. The supplier doesn't have. I remember just saying to myself, "Well, I don't have, I'm scared, but I'm going to go anyway because I guess I lose nothing by going. Maybe I lose my reputation." But I then ended up going. Then I decide when I go there, I'm going to have a notebook and a pencil. Then they assemble the kids. Mrs. Russ welcomes me. She asks me where the samples are. I say to her, "You'll see no samples." They assemble all the high school kids, the matriculants in the assembly point. Then I pull out this book and I say, "I've made some pencil sketches." She looked at me with her eyes popped in fear. "What?" The kids go, I show them 2 pages. They start screaming wildly, "We want that one." I don't know what they saw because it was really a lined out notebook, normal lined up two square notebook, written, drawn in pencil, no color. Then they say, "We want the second one." Then I make some adjustments. They start screaming. They love it. And then when
Right.
we go back into the office, Mrs. Russ looks at me and says, "I think you're a chancer because there's no way these kids even understand what you were showing them. But it's their money. They want it. Let's see. We'll make a decision and we'll let you know."
Oh, wow.
Literally a week later, she calls me in and says, "There was a unanimous decision. They'd all like to work with you. We've never ever worked with a company that was different from the fold of companies we work with to make and manufacture these matric jackets." And then she then says, "You had sent us a quote. The quote is 15,720. We need to write you up a balance of 50,000 or 50%. Who do we
Yeah.
make check out to?" I then say to her, "Well, if you make it out to the business, it might delay. And I know you're a lady who doesn't like delays because of auditors, but write the check out to me so that things move quicker." And the only logic behind it was when my brother would normally come back home from work because he was living away, he would normally write me a check of 100 Rand and I'd go with my ID to the nearest Standard Bank and withdraw it. So the logic was I'd walk back to Kempton Park, go to the Standard Bank, withdraw that money, find the supplier's account and deposit it immediately so that I don't pick up any issues.
Right.
Needless to say, I did that. I told her that, and she wrote the check 50%. I walked all the way back to Kempton Park City Centre. I went to the Standard Bank on West Street in Kempton Park. Went to the tellers and tried to cash the check. The teller was like, "I'm calling a manager." They called the manager. The manager was like, "Young man, this is a lot of money. Come to my office." Then he said to me that day, "You don't have a business account. You don't even have a personal bank account. So today we need to open your bank account and then cash
Good.
the check there." So we did that.
Yeah.
It took about 7 days for the check to clear, delayed us a bit, but needless to say, we delivered on our first order. Out of that,
Wow!
I made my first 800, gave my mother 500 at the time.
Oh,
I kept the 300, and then I then thought to myself, this is now 2007.
yeah,
The next round of matric jackets will be in 2008. I can't just sit and do nothing. So
yeah.
from about May or so in 2007, I started to then think up maybe what I need to do is start an internet cafe, something that will
Right.
daily money while in pursuit of this big printing
Mm,
business and manufacturing business. We
yeah.
opened up our doors on the 3rd of September. And I think how that started, because we almost had limited to no resources. My back opposite neighbors, the Namani family, were renovating their house.
Yeah.
So while they were demolishing, I asked for their wardrobe doors to use as table stand. The local supermarket, which was Score, gave me their crates as tabletops.
No
Table
way.
stands, sorry. A friend of mine, Zintle, gave me 400 Rand to buy material. Felicia gave me, I think she was actually the first person to give me 410 Rand to register the business in 2006.
Sure.
And then from there, different individuals, my aunt gave me ink, my brother gave me his printer. So it was a community effort. The local church gave me 4 chairs and carpets. And just like that, on the 3rd of September 2007, we opened our doors. First day we opened up, we made 5 Rand. So I kept those books and those ledgers. And with all the transaction, I think for the first 4, 5 years, 6 years, we didn't have 7 years, we didn't have employees, it was just me opening up,
Sure.
opening early to go stock and running that business for the first, I think for the first about 6, 7 years, we're making 380 Rand, 180 to about 380 Rand a month, and most months on a 3,000 Rand deficit, because at some point we needed to provide internet services, and it took Telkom I think about a good 2 years to up to install an ADSL exchange, because according to them, at the time we were the only ones who had applied for this in the township of Tembisa.
Right.
They only had dial-up internet, and hardly any household had dial-up internet at the time anyway. So we had to wait for that, and while waiting, we had to be competitive, meaning that we would use these dongles. I think there was the brand at the time was called Hoja Connect, and we needed to charge people market-related prices,
I
where
see.
they were charging us exorbitant prices. You're charging someone 7 Rand, the provider's charging you 20 Rand for the same experience.
No.
So you're always indebted,
In the red.
you know. But I think I think at the tipping point was 7 years, 8 months. The internet cafe now started to make money. We started to understand who our clients were, how we needed to make money. Hired my
Yeah.
first employee after 8.5 years of doing business. A gentleman by the name of Maxwell, amazing guy. Then
Yeah.
from there, started to focus on brokering the printing services and the printing work.
Yeah.
Met an amazing young man who was my age in the nearby town of Glenmarie by the name of Philip Halgren, who ran a big printing business. And really, when I went there looking to be a broker, he said, listen, I love your passion. I'll teach you everything, who the suppliers are, where you buy the machines, how everything works. I'll even introduce you to some of my clients. And if some of the clients that want us that we don't have work for, or we've got too much work for, I'll send over to you, but I'll teach you everything. So like that's where my internship then began. He taught me
Right.
everything. I learned how to weld. I learned how to print, all these different things that needed to be done. Really, I learned in that journey.
Yeah.
That's my deep desire to run a printing business. Then got the deep seed, then got planted. And I think out of that, years later, we went to Raise Corp. I think it was in 2010.
Mm.
I was at 2011, I was at Raise Corp. Then that helped me to formulate system for that first year or two and understand
Good.
things in a deep manner. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
after that, man, there's a lot that's happened, but we grew the business. The
Sure.
business did extremely well. I mean, what's the year now? In 2022, we sold that business. It ended up being print, branding, and manufacturing. After
Yeah.
16 years, we sold it. And
Lovely.
yeah, I think for me, it was a beautiful thing to be able to sell. And we sold the assets separately, and then we sold the
Mm.
client separately because it also had running contracts. Uh,
Mm.
then that became the exit. But out of that journey, we had
Yeah.
started an initiative in 2015 called T. Uh,
Yes.
our Township Entrepreneurs Alliance would then be birthed. And I guess it was birthed because of a passion, because now
Mm.
I'm sharing my story, and the more I shared the story, more people wanted to hear the story, and then it built affinity. Then I'm on TV platforms, then I'm getting covered by certain publications. That meant that it brought the attention of some of my peers in the community who would then ask how you do certain things. And because I'd been in business for so long, I thought those were basic questions, I guess in my ignorance or even arrogance. But in reality, they didn't know, and there was a lack of information. So we then decided to start T Simple, in a
Hey,
simple format, to do two simple things: to
right.
provide like a platform for township businesses that are only based in Tembisa. Young
Okay.
individuals, 20 of them, wanted just 20 for us as peers to meet once a month for the purpose of sharing ideas,
Yeah.
sharing information with the hope that we'll do business with each other. You know, on the first day we did, we gathered, we had about 161 individuals.
Not
Um,
20 anymore.
20, 161 that showed up. And I guess we continued in that simplified format for the first 2 years. Out of that, you now hear there are challenges, there are hunger to grow. You engage with agencies that are DFIs, whose job is primarily to support these individuals. Then I
Mm.
guess the deep insatiable hunger as an entrepreneur to want to help solve problems. Then now we go deeper. We start doing research. We start doing insights through basic surveys. We start doing a lead funnels to other incubators and prosperators that wanted to support these entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Then over the years, we've been able to grow into a nationwide, I guess, initiative that has been able to directly impact over 80,000 township entrepreneurs. And then we've got two offerings. We've got a corporate offering,
Yeah.
and now NPC offering, which then is the one that houses the community of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and provides with the mentorship, business support, enterprise development. And then on the side
Right.
for corporate partners, we then provide market insights analytics, so baseline needs analysis. We then provide activations and workshop
Sure.
initiative programs that they plug into the ones we own, or we run their full-on programs. And then we
Lovely.
then also then provide them with with enterprise development programs and skills development
Excellent.
programs, and then funding distribution. And
Wow.
yeah, it's the journey. 19
All
years,
right.
19 years formal, 21 years informal, because the first 2 years I was selling in sweets, namakwenya. And then I guess in between that journey for the 8 years of the internet cafe struggling, I mean, January to March at Style Stationery. At the end of the
Yo.
month, the last 6 days of the month at Style Enterprise Poloni Packs. I'd run an
Sure.
internet cafe from 8 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m. But from 4 a.m. in the morning, I'd wake up because I had gathered enough money to have a taxi association license. So a friend of mine had a kumbi because his granddad passed on and left it to him. So we would
Yeah.
then collect kids in the morning. I'd collect kids with him in the morning, and then in the afternoon, he would then do that run. And then in
Sure.
between, you're doing odd jobs of rubble removal, electrical work, trying to do odd things to sort of balance out to this grand dream of running this big um, printing business. So the
Oh,
whole, and getting to a point where one now ends up speaking was almost by chance, because then I was
sure.
asked multiple times, just share your story and inspire individuals. And I guess out of that grew this deep, deep, deep desire to
Mm.
impact the township, to want to position their business, to want to build solutions and
Sure.
technologies in this market
Sure.
to help these amazing micro enterprises thrive.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, I know there
I
was a
am
long spiel,
inspired.
but sure.
I am inspired beyond words. Oh, incredible journey. Incredible journey.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So now let's start where we are now. So just absolutely amazing. So your T, as you call it, has got the NPC part and there's a corporate part. I'd like to just unpack each at a time. So let's say I run my own business in a township, and then now it doesn't matter where in any part of the country, South Africa, there is support there. So what should the entrepreneur do uh, to access the services you offer, and what do you offer to these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I think what we then offer to them really is like what we said is, so the enterprise development programs that they are able to
Yeah,
plug into. Those are on
Right.
call. So those are primarily on call. So whenever we've got a program that is funded, they can plug in if they meet the criteria, or their industry businesses focus on that specific industry. But
Okay.
however, we then have running programs that they can plug in on a month-to-month base that
Okay.
provide soft skills, market access, resources to help them grow their businesses and move them
Sure.
to the next level. Then what we
Sure.
then do for them as well, we then also then offer 6 months, 3 to 6 months structured learning.
Right.
They can then opt in for 6 months, or say 6 months structured learning on course content that we then develop, then they can plug in online. So that then is online based. And I think what we've always tried to do is that with the limited resources that we had,
Yeah.
that we've had, to then always create consistency in impact, because this is passion work more than it is anything else. But we've also
Yeah.
then found sustainable ways of keeping sustainable, but also at the same time finding innovative ways of keeping these entrepreneurs on their feet and as far as opportunities are concerned. And then we will
Yeah.
then also then aggregate for opportunities, either media opportunities or work opportunities with large corporates. And as a result of all the work that we've done over the past, now I guess this year is our 10th year, directly
Yeah.
with Township Entrepreneurs, is that we're building a digital platform to then aggregate for more opportunities for them, so that we democratize access to them as well. In any
Yeah.
other corporate that is looking to support suppliers and supply development, you don't have to
Sure.
do them through us. You can literally use the platform to source them and then do the
Excellent.
training and development with someone else. Because the biggest thing that
Excellent.
we want is for these entrepreneurs, to access the information and the development that is suited to them. And then the big part as well is that we play a very, very big, loud and advocacy role
Okay.
around payment processes, around red tape, around compliance, around the spaza shops, around any regulatory issues or policies or challenges that we think are not in favor of these businesses. And I think that's really the deep work that we do around, in and around the NPC.
Right. So now I'm an entrepreneur and this I'm selling whatever I am selling. How do I get this structured learning? Is it sort of Zoom trainings? How do just kind of
Perfect. Oh, no,
let
so
me walk in there as an entrepreneur.
no, no, perfect. So what you would do with those is that we normally put out a call every 6 months. You apply for that, then you can
Yeah.
join the online Zoom cohort.
Okay.
But then can participate. We then send you soft material for you to be able to follow the lessons from home. But what we then do is that, because we understand that these micro enterprises sometimes get extremely busy, we would then send you all the content post each lesson so that you can then do refreshes. And then at the end of it, you then get a certification. But also equally, as part of signing in, there's an assessment that we then do to get to understand your business in depth
Sure.
with that. But however, because we then do that freely of our own, it becomes a resource, it becomes a bit of a resource challenge to be able to allocate a resource to do what's in follow-ups after, in terms of the growth. But what we then do is that we would then, after 6 months or so, do surveys with those individuals to then get an understanding. What have you learned? Has it been impactful? How have you used it? Has there been any change in employees? Has there been any change in revenue as a result of what you have learned? So we
Sure.
would then use the feedback from that to consistently iterate our
Yeah.
support for these entrepreneurs. But however, because we also then have a flagship program called the Kasi Business Workshops,
Right.
which does a number of different things, that those then also then allow us, as we move into the different communities around the country, for various
Yeah.
entrepreneurs to attend, to learn on the master classes on the day, exhibit
Yeah.
and showcase your business. But also, whilst you exhibit and showcase your business, we then also then provide you with an invoicing and quotation system at no cost. We then
No
help
way.
you with profile images at no cost. We then also then help you with the promo video on the
Right.
day to walk away with at no cost, that's not branded. And then that's for the exhibitors. And then the third thing that we then do on the day is that we then open up for a pre-selected six applicants. We send out a call for entry for individuals to participate in our pitching challenge that is
Right.
pre-adjudicated independently. On the day that they pitch, it's judged independently by 5 different judges. Then the winner
Mm.
will give 50,000 Rand towards their business. And then we then have facilitated networking. And what we mean by facilitated networking is that we measure it on the day, 2 days after, and also 2 months after. And what we have picked up from that is that 68% of the entrepreneurs who attend these workshops do business with each other. Now,
No
that
way.
for me is a beautiful thing because those workshops come and go. So they move
Yes.
around, and maybe the next time we'll come back to that particular township is in the next 6 or 12 months. So for
Right.
us, it means that the general attendees, majority of them have done themselves a great satisfaction by finding someone to do business with. And that's what we always aggregate for, to say we are not the catalyst, but all we do is create a small platform for you to meet the people that you could potentially collaborate with who live in the same neighborhood as you. So I think those are some of the interventions that we then run.
Wow.
And then all the others become structured based on whoever is the large corporate to say, listen, we've got X amount to go towards enterprise development or funding distribution for machinery and equipment. Can you source these individuals? So we would then always source from this pool of entrepreneurs that we have at T.
I see. Wow. It's just beautiful. Because now I wanted to figure out the unit economics now. I mean, you're doing all this work, and now I want to see how money flows. So that the facilitators and all the setup that you do and the digital platforms that you've built, I guess they attract some costs. And it seems from what I'm hearing, the entrepreneurs they sort of attend this for free.
Yeah, so the entrepreneurs attend for free. And I'll tell you, so I mean, when we started T, what was funding it was my manufacturing business. And yeah, but also not funding it wholly, but funding it to the point where we are able to then run, right, and have
Okay.
resources and equipment and whatever support, well, sorry, and whatever support required.
Yeah.
However, for us, the big because of this big passion and desire to do this impactful work, you would find that whatever work we do on the commercial side, where you invoice 100 Rand and there's 20 Rand left over, I'd always take 10 Rand and throw it into two. And I'll tell you why, because I've always had this big desire that at some point there'd be a big focus on township, and 10 years later, there's a focus on township. Now we've got
Sure.
this big desire to say, because we've got this data and insights on these township entrepreneurs, let's switch up our model to say if we worked with 80,000, let's operate as if we've only worked with 1,000 and ask ourselves a
Right.
simple question. How can we get this 1,000 to plug into our processes so that they then plug into our bulk buying methodologies? So then we can
Excellent.
start to utilize crowdfunding in and around this community and build it into an active community of individuals that will work together towards disrupting the markets and the financial sector. And I guess that's where our mindset now is to say, let us invest our own capital, let us build our own tools so that we
Yeah.
could then go into the market and be competitive.
Sure. Studying. Right. Oh, wow. I can't believe the time is moving. It's just we got a couple of minutes left. But I was just curious if you just reflect on your journey. What is the sort of 2 or 3 leadership principles that have carried you, and you say, hey, if you want to win, perhaps in the township or just as a leader anywhere, this seems to have worked for me. This is some of the things you have learned as an individual doing the
Sure.
work that you do.
No, man, I think for me, it's I think number one, it's really being have your hand on the pulse of what's going on. I mean, if
Right.
you're a corporate that's looking to do work in the township, do it with true authenticity and have a
Sure.
deep, deep desire to want to formalize yourself. I always say, we always call it the informal economy, but I always say to the guys, if actually you understood how it works, you'll understand how formal it is. Just standards of CIPC, right? And the banking regulation standards, it's not. But in terms of how money moves and the operations and the consistency, and you'd learn so much. It's a masterclass in and of itself. But also then equally on
Mm.
the other side, to these individuals that grew up from those townships, if you say that you've tested your business model everywhere and it's not working, I mean, I'd beg to say, have you tested it where you grew up? Have you tested it in the township? You might even find that what you're running away from is actually chasing after you. And the people
Sure.
that you're running towards as potential customers are running the other opposite direction, looking at customers in the potential communities that you come from. So I
Sure.
think from a leadership perspective for me is to say, it's important that, whatever work that we do needs to be impact work. And I think
Sure.
the moment it's impact work, you always see it in the baseline in the long
Sure.
term. And that's always been my view. You always see it in the long term because you're not, yes, you're running a capitalist business, and you need to be profitable at the end. And I'm a big advocate for that, because once you're profitable and you make your
Yeah.
revenue, then you are able to then drive impact wherever you go. But
Yeah.
my big thing has always been to say, let's never ever limit resources to only monetary resources. There's IP, there's
Sure.
skills, there's social equity that we could share with the community so that we grow. The
Sure.
second thing really for me is to say it's important for sorry, it's for second thing for me really to say it's important for us to then not adopt a small mindset. And I think the mind is such an
Right.
important tool. Majority of the time I've seen small business owners calling themselves small business owners. What they were indirectly sometimes saying is that, my mindset is even small and I'm not gonna dream beyond where I am.
Sure.
The small business should only be a resource start, but never ever a mindset start. So that when you are in the boardroom with individuals like Dr. Maanda and others
Yeah.
who are of a high caliber, you are also able to pitch your ideas not at the level of your resources, but at the level
Mm.
of your mindset. Meaning that it's
Lovely.
important for you to consistently expand your mindset. I mean, I
Sure.
watch you. I mean, I literally watch you and I've followed you for years and the work that you do, and silently mentoring me through your
Sure.
LinkedIn accounts. And I think for me, it's stuff like that where you are able to say, I'm disrupting myself before I'm disrupted. Find
Oh,
those individuals out there that will help you disrupt your mindset. And I think the
sure.
last one for me is get things done. So by you watching this
Right.
podcast right now, and why by you watching this podcast consistently, you are disrupting yourself and you are getting things
Sure.
done. And I think
Sure.
the thing that we have learned that is consistent is that talk is cheap, numbers don't lie. If you want to
Yeah.
move your life or your business to the next level or your sales to the next level, you need to
Yeah.
physically go out there and get things done and move the needle for yourself.
Oh, wow. Stunning. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, what's happening in our country right now, there is a lot going on around the township, regulations. You know the story. And the question for me is, how do we unlock more of the township growth beyond the sort of the current challenges that we have? I just wonder, post all the organization that's going on, what do you envision for the township? And,
Yeah.
what could you say to the many stakeholders, the multinationals that want to reach the townships, the people who are leading, building businesses in the townships, the regulators, etc. Where do you see the townships, which is a huge, huge part of our economy?
Yeah, you look at the data, right? I mean, I think the last refined data from CIPC that was released, I think the quite recent one by Stats,
Yeah,
the quite recent one by Stats talks to the fact that there's about 1,800 informal
yeah,
traders,
sure,
businesses, right? I mean, I
sure.
think that number is a bit of a conservative number because it's difficult to actually get finite data. But I think if
Yeah,
that number is anything to go by, and if the almost 600,000 small businesses that's reported by CIPC are anything to go by, it means that the next level of frontier growth for sales for any large corporate who's got a deep township focus, or
yeah,
who's got consumer facing products, because the majority of consumers live in townships and rural
yeah,
communities across the country. So I
yeah.
think for me it would be to say operate with a mindset that dispels anything that you think you might have heard about the township. That really
Right.
opens it up, and it lends itself up to understanding the fact that sorry, that lends itself to understanding the fact that this is a very formal economy, and you
Yeah,
being able to, serve it very well, you then need to then disrupt some of the ways in which you then operate and have your hand deeply on the pulse of what's going on. I think for
sure.
me, when I look at I think for me, when I look even from a policy perspective, I mean, it's taken so long to rework, spatial policies around
Yeah,
zone, but the reality is majority of the businesses that operate in the township are operating illegally according to the local municipalities because of zoning. So basic things like
sure.
that are inhibiting their development and their growth. But then you then also then go back to the data that we have that we collect year on year, and it talks to the fact that 90% of them operate from home, which then gives you a
Sure.
clear which then gives you a clear understanding to say townships then operate as a space where the home is not just a home. The home is where you manufacture, and then that's where you also then consume. So meaning
Oh,
that, through hyper localization, we then need to,
yeah,
number one, drive develop support through hyper localization, where individuals within a certain zone, within a certain space, can drive localization of those goods and procurement of those goods, so that
yo,
what that then does is that you don't now need to build 100 square meter factories. Their
okay,
garage, which is a 6 by 3, operates now as a space to consume, create whatever needs to be consumed over the next 2 days. Then
yo,
that way you are then able to then also then drive up and ramp up employment, because the next level, in my view, of employment growth is going to come from small and micro, even medium enterprises, right, within
absolutely.
driving the country's GDP forward. And then I think big, really for me, is in terms of driving the township forward, really those hubs of economic development and them running well are super important.
Yeah.
Uh, we can't say that in 2005 that if you want to move your business to the next level, you must get into a taxi, go to Bryanston, and then go to Sandton, and in a almost 5 kilometer radius, there's about 5 or 6 hubs. Whereas in a township, and a young person wants to develop a basic MVP, will still
Mm,
struggle with developing that MVP, because the sole premise of being able to validate your idea is on the sole mindset that says learn fast, fail fast. So if
mm.
the young individuals are taking too long to learn and they're taking too long to fail, then they get to 60 and nothing has actually happened. But if we want to drive our country's innovation, is in us
Yeah.
being able to put them in a point where they're able to iterate, fail through those iterations to get to what is actually going to move their needle, their revenue, and their growth.
Oh, wow. Bulelani, we need another conversation because we're at the top of the hour.
Thank
Just
you so
two
much.
questions, just one challenge you want to give to our listeners, or
Sure.
a challenge and a book recommendation, just those two,
Perfect.
or any resource.
The first challenge for me that I'd give to the listeners is find a small business to support. But not just with resources. Find a small business to support with your skills, with your IP, with your social equity, right? And then with your resources if you have. And then take a picture of their products, even if you've never met them, if you like them from social media, post and talk about them and share them with your network. I think that then goes an extremely long way. And I think a
Thanks.
big book resource out there is definitely, I mean, the book that I've written, which is the Township Entrepreneurs Guide to Getting
Yes.
Things Done. Definitely love that book, read that book, but also I definitely recommend a book by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mark Gerber, which is The E-Myth. It's going to revolutionize your business and
The
how to
E-Myth.
optimize the E-Myth. An amazing, amazing book. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm gonna get a copy myself too. Bulelani, thanks a million for such an inspirational and insightful conversation.
Now, I appreciate you. You inspire me. Thank you so much. I just wanted to tell you that to your face. You
Ah,
inspire
lovely.
me. I've watched your work over the years. I've heard
Thank
you've been talking about in corners. I've been told I need to play golf to meet this man over and over by a number of different people over the years. And to have met you last year was a blessing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, man. Thank you.
thank you. Have an awesome one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.